Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Business from the Bass Boat on the Serious Angler Network, powered by X2 Power. And guys, today we've got an exciting show lined up, something I'm really passionate about. Again, staying still on this West Coast flair and talking more of this West Coast stuff, and specifically Desert Lake, and so much history around this stuff. Really excited to get this guy on. He's been the voice behind One Bass for a long time and everything U.S. Open related. Let's bring him in here. Billy Egan, the man. How are you, Billy?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on, Adam. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to come out here and talk.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm so excited. This is it's a big change this year, 40th anniversary. We're talking a lot of history around this event, and big change in locations, and we'll get a little bit into that. But first, just wanted to see how's your summer been? I know you're way out on you're in California, correct? Like San Diego area, or where in
Yeah,
California?
we're in mid-California. We're in the Orange County area near Dana Point, Newport Beach area,
Okay.
in San Clemente.
Yeah.
Western Outdoor News, One Bass is headquartered in San Clemente. So it's been an awesome summer. A lot of great times down at the beach and a lot of good events going on. And other than just One Bass events, we do 12 events a year, including the One Bass events. So lots of stuff going on, and it's been a great year so far.
Awesome. Awesome, man. You surf sometimes, don't you? I've seen some
I
out.
do. I do. I play beach volleyball mostly. That's my exercise, and I've got a beach that I've been going to for too long. Uh, Not long, but I've watched most of the kids that I saw that were about this big grow up to have their own kids. So yeah, Southern California. It's a beautiful place to live, and it's a great place to have Western Outdoor News be 74 years of producing a weekly paper out here by the same family, the Twilliger family. So, and Wombass is owned by Western Outdoor News. It's the parent company. So
Yep.
there's a little magazine right there with my son on the cover that he got a 300-pound boar last year. So yeah, it's a nice place.
That's awesome. Well, the last time we had you on, we really broke down your career and everything with One Bass, and it was great. And that was with when Business from the Bass Boat was separate from the Serious Angler podcast. So great to kind of get you on. New audience here, or somewhat. We've got a larger audience as this podcast has just grown. So it's great to, if anyone is interested in looking back, you can go way back and see those prior episodes to dive in to Billy's kind of history and how he got in. But for now, really, we are going to dive into the U.S. Open in 2022. Super excited. For a long time, the US Open has always been that grinder event, right? And it's always was kind of that late summer, and then it kind of moved into that October timeframe, which can still be a tough time depending on what you're looking at. The trick is this year we're changing fisheries to a place that has bigger fish for sure.
Right.
Am I wrong there?
For 39 years, the U.S. Open, it's a long-standing tradition with this event. It's the first $100,000 payout tournament that ever happened back in the day, 1981, with Greg Hines winning it. Fortunately for myself, I've been involved with One Bass now this is ending my 13th year of being a tournament director for One Bass and taking over for Harvey Naslund in 2010. At that U.S. Open, and it's been a great journey. It's been unbelievable, just the relationships and the people that I've been able to be around, not only the sponsors, but the anglers. And it's near and dear to my heart. I've been doing this because I love doing it. The people and friendships that I've garnished throughout the years is just tremendous. Not counting the West Coast guys, but the national type guys, like Aaron Martins. Obviously, he and I became really close friends after that first U.S. Open I ever produced. And he was literally the one guy, and he just had his birthday recently. So he was the one guy at that 2010 U.S. Open, my very first U.S. Open, said, "Hey, Billy, I want to help you get this event to 200 boats. There's no reason this shouldn't be a 200 boat event." And It took a few years, but we finally made it. I mean, we've had numbers up to 270 before at the U.S. Open. This year, we're sitting right now at 201 boats for the 40th anniversary U.S. Open. And like you mentioned, for 39 years, we've been at Lake Mead doing the U.S. Open. It's the home of U.S. Open. Colville Bay was the home marina for the U.S. Open, but obviously, with the water conditions and the drought situation that we're under out here in the West, Lake Mead doesn't have the facilities nor the launch ramps to even try to put it on an event. You know, a lot of people actually, I get calls every day. Hey, it rained a lot up there in Vegas. I see flooding in Vegas. Did that help Lake Mead? 14 inches of water is not going to help our current situation. So for this year, we partnered with the Visit Laughlin, the LTC in Laughlin, to bring the U.S. Open for the first time to Lake Mojave. Now we did an event in March at Lake Mojave with the LTC and the Visit Las Vegas groups. They've got great partners in Laughlin with 7 different hotels that are offering discount rates and all that stuff. And there's the facilities at Catherine's Landing and the lake itself. I mean, it's basically you have an opportunity to double the size of fish that you're catching during this year's U.S. Open at Lake Mojave than you would at Lake Mead. Lake Mead, as Rick Clunn has said for many years, and it's become a very close friend. One of the first times I ever talked to him, he mentioned, you know, you can't call yourself a true champion if you don't have a Lake Mead U.S. Open championship underneath your belt, because Lake Mead was the great equalizer. And, you know, the one thing we had all these different variables coming across us with the low water situations and the barrels and different things that are happening out there. We quickly knew that, hey, we pulled some rabbits out of the hat last year to make the event happen there.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the smoothest events we've ever run under those conditions. You know, if you figure after 12 years of running the U.S. Open, trying to get these guys to get in line and get their boats in line early. The one year that we have ramp issues was the one year everybody was launched before 6:30, and we didn't have a line of people still launching when we went out to do the national anthem and get things going. So it really worked real well last year at Lake Mead, but there was just no possibility of running the event this year. So because we had partnered with Laughlin and Visit Laughlin for the March event, we approached them with the opportunity of bringing the 40th anniversary to Lake Mojave, it's a 57-mile long lake.
Yep.
You know, it's not a small lake, but it's not quite as big as Lake Mead is.
Sure.
But it's full pull. Lake Mojave will never fluctuate more than 5 feet at any time during the year. Now, leading up to the U.S. Open is right when they typically will drop the lake about 5 feet, because they've got some invasive species that hatch and so forth. And if you lower the water level, those eggs that are on the reeds and different plants, if you lower the water, they'll not make it throughout the gestation period of those insects. Okay. And it helps eradicate some of the gnats and mosquitoes and different bugs that plague that particular area. But Mojave is a beautiful, beautiful lake. It's big. It's got really good size smallmouth in it and largemouth as well. There's a good striper population there. And I spent a couple days there, August 18th and 19th, with meetings at Laughlin to work out details with the hotels and also at Catherine's. And the fishing was a little tough, but one of the things I noticed, and some of these guys might be interested in this, and some of the people listening, we were chasing what we thought were bait fish, puddling all over the place. And we were hearing reports of, hey, go over to this area. We saw a lot of bait fish. Hey, go this area. So when we were out there, the conditions were a little tough because there were some monsoon rains coming in, and actually took about 9 of the telephone poles or electrical poles down that caused a blackout at Catherine's for a little bit. But when we got on the water, we found these puddling bait fish that we thought, and we spent about an hour fishing this area that there was literally on the screen just what you thought was a bait ball everywhere.
Okay.
After about an hour of fishing it, I took one of the baits that I was using and really kind of slowed it down and tried to give it some action just before I got to the boat. What we realized is there are thousands of baby bass in that lake. They're
Really?
actually bait fish, and nothing was eating them. Nothing was being predatory towards them. It was just
That's
these different
crazy.
locations we went, thousands and thousands of baby bass, which just says how rich
Fertile.
that fishery is and
Yeah.
what potentials could be.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, this time of the year, it seems, especially that like August window, especially in Colorado and our lakes that have just a large population and smallmouth. But my goodness, it's the same kind of way. You just have those big groups of uh, small bass. And to me, in that situation, I almost think on a place like Mojave with a big striper population, I would think that eventually that those striper would just find those things and crush them. You know what I mean?
We were surprised that there weren't any predatory fish around this. I mean,
Yeah,
literally, they must have been eating some insects or something that were larvae or
they were
something.
just up there
There were
just making little
schools
runs.
all
Oh,
around it.
wow. Really?
There
Okay.
were no predatory fish
Mm,
around, and you would think in those kind of situations that the striped bass would hear that, or the largemouth or smallmouth would hear that and congregate around those, but there was nothing. But
that's crazy.
we ended up catching some legal fish, had a good time. Kevin Johnson, one of our pros that's owns Next Gen Lithium,
Mhm.
just posted a 551 personal best smallmouth that he caught a couple days ago in a little deeper water. So there's fish all over that lake. And the beauty about Lake Mojave being 57 miles long, you've got this southern end, which is closer to the dam area, which has a lot of coves, a lot of inlets and areas. And then it really opens up into the belly of the lake into a big mass type lake situation. And then if you go past Cottonwood Cove, you're getting into this thinner, kind of more traditional Lake Mead type fisheries where you would go all the way up to Willow Beach area where a lot of big striped bass guys try to target big bass up there. But there's a lot of places to fish, and with 200 plus boats, we've maxed the event out at 225, so we're not quite there yet. But if anybody's listening and wants to make this year the year that they come out and participate in the U.S. Open, we have spots available for pro anglers until we reach that 225 max limit, as well as co-angler positions too. But 49 years of running the U.S. Open is a pretty big and pretty monumental event. And one of the cool things that we've done with that being the 40th anniversary is this year we have decided to implement and induct our first ever 5 WAN Bass Hall of Famers.
Wow,
Yeah.
very cool.
So we,
That's
we we decided amongst our company that it was time, with 40 years below our belt running this event, that we need to start recognizing some of these guys that have been around, not only anglers but industry people as well, that have supported WAN Bass and the U.S. Open, let alone our other events. But we're going to be doing a expo like we've never done before. And typically we call that a sponsors row, where
okay.
in past events at Las Vegas, we'll have one of the concert halls where each of the sponsors have a table where they represent their products, and there's a gift on the table for each of the anglers that signed up for the event, get to come by, shake hands, touch and feel their products, and then get a nice little gift for signing up for the event. This year, because it's in Laughlin, because we've partnered with Laughlin and Visit Laughlin and the 7 hotel partners, we're going to be doing an expo at the East Center, which is located at Edgewater Casino.
Okay.
It's an indoor concert hall that sits about, I think it was 5,500 people. So plenty of room for all of the sponsors to have tables. And for the first time ever, we're actually inviting the general public to come to this event. So not only can the anglers come by and meet all the sponsors and get a gift, the general public can come and meet the Rick Cluns, the Brett Heights, the Josh Bertrands, the Chris Zaldanes, and the people that fish the national tours, and our Western pros that make up for 75% of our entries here.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And folks, if you haven't ever, for folks who don't know how the structure works in a one bass event, the AAA format, great opportunity. And for anyone out there that's interested and has some time this fall to go to an incredible fishery in the West, highly would recommend. And the AAA format makes that super accessible if someone were wanting to fly into Vegas and drive down and fish that type of event, and or your typical normal travel. But it makes it a really fun situation. And Billy, I guess for anyone who isn't quite familiar, can you kind of describe what that AAA Pro format looks like?
Yeah, WAN is, as far as I know, the only circuit that does a shared weight format
Hmm.
event. So basically, what that means is, it's just the same as all the other circuits out there that do pro and amateur style events. But unlike MLF or what was FLW and other circuits, our anglers actually, it's a shared weight format. So what we do is, obviously, you have to have the same amount of pros as you do amateurs or co-anglers or triple A's. There's multiple different names for those amateurs or co-anglers, but you get to fish no matter what for 3 days. We have no cuts. We have no elimination rounds where people don't get to fish the second or third day.
Yeah.
So it's literally, I mean, it's $600 as a co-angler to fish the U.S. Open. It's $1,600 to fish as a pro. But to be able to fish with three pros, let alone national pros and local Western pros, for a total amount of $600 for 3 days. I mean, you can't even get a guide for less than $400 these days.
No.
And what happens is, because we're the only ones that do shared weight format, the pro and the co randomly get paired together. So a pro will fish with a random co for 3 days. Typically, it's somebody they don't know, but it might be somebody that's been fishing the circuit for a while and that they've fished with before. But regardless, they are able to go out and combine, bring in the best 5 fish between the two of them for the day. We also have, within our payout structure, a included big fish payout and big stringer payout. So for 3 days, the top 5 big fish on the pro side and the big fish on the triple side will get $1,000 check as part of our payout structure. The biggest stringer each day, based on the pro and the co that bring in the biggest bag each day, will earn $2,000 each day. So those are, things that we put out there. But literally, you, for $600 as a co-angler, can come out and fish with a Mike Folkstad, who's coming out of retirement this year to fish at 82 years old, who's literally the only guy that's got 3 U.S. Open championships other than Clifford Perch. Clifford Perch right now, because Aaron passed away, is the only person who could possibly take away a fourth U.S. Open trophy at this point. And
Hmm.
he'll be there this year as well. But, the experience, I always tell people when they sign up for our open events or the U.S. Open event, is once you fish a Wombass Open event, you will make friends for life, because there is no backseater situation. You're encouraged to help that amateur or that co-angler catch whatever they can, because it's helping that pro's bag in the long run.
Cause. Yeah, and to me that is awesome because I've fished from the front and the back of the boat quite a lot now, and um, basically the idea there. Sometimes you draw a guy from the back of the boat where he's not really interested in telling you what he's doing, like or how he's catching them, or those conversations are so much more open in a AAA format, and they're going to help you and say, "Hey, look, here's what I'm using." There's no secrets, right? There's no like, there's no hiding a bait from somebody because you're trying to get them to catch fish
Right.
to help the cause. So, super uh, incredible format when it comes to that. One thing I will say, the only other folks doing this that I'm aware of, and this was through Eric Luzak, who was on the podcast last, actually, when we had fished together on Champlain, we were talking about that in Canada. All the Canadian tournaments he grew up with, and he's like, what's crazy is I don't know where this came from, but like there was no team there. It was either team tournament or a AAA style format. There was no co-angler. He said it was new when he came to the States to fish a Toyota Series event, those type of things. He was like, whoa, this is crazy. I didn't realize that we're not working together here. So
Right.
that's
Well,
pretty
the
crazy.
interesting thing with co-anglers, I was taught by Harvey Naslund, he was the first guy who was involved with the U.S. Open back in 2000 or 1981.
Mhm.
And when all the guys back then used to have pro and pro situation, there was no co-anglers back then.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
would flip a coin to find out which boat you guys would be using and who would have the front of the boat for the first half of the day. And I, I, s- I've heard that, and people have told me about it. And I'm in today's market, I would have to be separating people at the end of the day because
there'd be fights.
you just there's you got egos, you got things that are involved and so forth. But it's interesting to look at the tradition. And originally, co-anglers were brought in, at least in our format, as a security purpose because
Insurance wise,
you
right?
get randomly paired with a guy that you've never met. It's a lot harder to cheat with somebody that you don't know than it is
Oh,
to
yeah,
cheat with somebody you do know.
sure.
So, not to say that cheating is prevalent. We all have heard the stories. And shoot, my first year here at Wambass, we caught Mike Hart doing what he did, and everybody knows that story. If
Mhm.
you haven't, I'm sure you could do some research and find it. But it's interesting. The co-anglers bring an aspect to it. The U.S. Open in its bare minimum format. I mean, you get an entry online from somebody that wants to participate in a tournament, but you don't know who this person is. You've never met them before. You don't know what age they are. So sometimes you get guys that are later in their years that want to show up and participate in something like this, and you have to kind of deal with situations as they arise.
Mhm.
Maybe they need a back seat because they're not so good on their legs, but it's worked out throughout the years where this co-angler situation really helps the format and becomes a really friendly format where people they bond and make friendships for a lifetime after an
Mhm.
event like this.
Yeah.
You do have situations, where I obviously tell everybody prior to the event during our meetings that there are things that you need to abide by during the tournament as an amateur because sometimes the pro's not familiar with that particular lake or that body of water, and they might draw a AAA that's a local guy that may have a little bit more knowledge on the lake than they do.
Mhm.
Stress very importantly that during the tournament, let's just say, for instance, a pro on the second day is struggling. He's run out of spots and he looks at his co-angler and he's like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, I'm familiar with the lake. Let's go to one of these spots I have.
Yeah.
Key thing is if a AAA does that and gives that pro that spot, he can't give it to the next day's pro because he's now turned that spot into that pro spot.
Sure, sure.
Can't share information back and forth and end up on day 3 where there's 2 pros on the same spot because the co-angler was the common
It's the
denominator.
guy.
So
Yeah, yeah.
we make that that information very prevalent up ahead of times. And one of the things I want to just say right now, and without Basscat boats and Mercury motors, we wouldn't be where we're at today
Mm.
running these open events. So we've got great sponsors involved with Wambass and all of our events, and Power Pole, and I could go off with the whole list of 30 some pro sponsors that are involved with our events that help us put on these events and make them a success like they are.
Awesome, awesome. It's important to get that in there, and glad to see as Rick's Pierce attention out west. I've always thought the Basscat Boat has done an incredible job with supporting the industry out west, and Mojave too. One of those things I was thinking about through this, it can absolutely get rolling, just like Mead. As
Yeah,
far as
it's like me.
those desert lakes go, for those of you just a Colorado River chain tutorial. I mean, you've got Lake Mead right next to Vegas, and then you drop down and you've got Mojave, which is a little bit bigger than Havasu, but obviously not as big as Mead. And then the next one down is Havasu there. And that whole Colorado River chain is awesome. But
Yeah,
that Mojave is what I love. I mean, I just love desert lakes, and I love how Mojave is not as populated, right, as like a Havasu is. I mean, it is a true desert lake, and the views out there are incredible. It's clearer, in my opinion, than all of them,
Yep.
and it can. I read the article on One Bass's website just around Gunner Stranton, and so last year I fished a championship out on Mojave and blew a powerhead, or is a team tournament on our tournament on Havasu the final day, but still had enough to make it to Mojave. And Gunner let us borrow his boat there. I met Gunner fishing college
That
tournament.
must have been an ABA event. I see a
Yep.
plaque behind you. Yeah, I
Yep.
know when they did the shared weight or shared lake thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
the shootout for a bass cat. But he warned me. He's like, what protects this place is the wind, because people can't always get on it. Like you can definitely be careful, be prepared for that for sure.
yeah,
Especially
we have a lot of people that that are the secretive guys that have kept Mojave try to keep Mojave to themselves.
Mhm.
Obviously, with Lake Mead getting most of the attention, and Lake Havasu, in between the two of them. But with Mead's situation, Mojave's become the next best place, obviously, to run an event with the Laughlin Tourism Commission and the Visit Laughlin guys out there that have gotten behind our events. It helps tremendously. I mean, Catherine's Landing down there, I'm not sure if that's where the event was out at Catherine's Landing for your ABA event. Catherine's Landing is a beautiful facility, literally 4 lanes on each side of the launch ramp there. They've got camping facilities. They've got slips to, we've got about 60 to 80 slips that we can use for our weigh-ins. It makes it perfect for a weigh-in situation.
Mhm.
With Laughlin only being 15 minutes away from the lake, it's a great synergy. And, you know, with the fish being a little bit bigger at Mojave, the weights are going to be a little different than a traditional U.S. Open, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But being in October, we're not going to see the really big weights that you would maybe in
Your
February,
Steve
March.
event. Yeah.
Uh, when Mr. Stanton does so well. The fishing there, I mean, it's great. It's a beautiful lake. You can see a mile in the water, and it's been dealing with some torrential rains during the squalls that have been coming through this time of year.
Mhm.
But it's going to be a great place to run the 40th anniversary U.S. Open.
Yeah, and it's like you were talking about the lake structure. To me, it's very similar. It's interesting to me, those lower Colorado chain river lakes. It's like a Havasu and Mojave are the same. They're both real narrow on the north and the south end, and then they kind of have that bowl style in
Right.
the middle. So plenty of room, like you said, 57 miles long. And that bowl can get rocking. So be careful with that. And one question I did have for you, just on your knowledge at all. I've got a friend actually in college right now that was telling me a little bit. He's in a water class, right? So they're going through the Colorado River situation and everything in that chain. So you were saying that Mojave really doesn't fluctuate much on an annual basis, and I've heard that same thing with Havasu, because they have to keep enough water. Like Havasu will never go away, because that's the one that really is the last leg before you get the water to California and the Southern California
Yeah, well,
region.
you got Yuma, Arizona down below with Lake Martinez, which is still part of the Colorado River chain. But
Okay.
because of the power situation with the water coming out of the Davis Dam and other areas above that, they have to continue letting water out. But for Mojave, it will never fluctuate more than 5 feet in depth at any time throughout the year. Now, the unique
Wow.
thing is we have an off limits period for the U.S. Open coming up between September 19th and September 30th.
Okay.
So I've got a lot of guys that are saying, "Hey, well, I'm going to go run out there the first 2 weeks of September and get some practice in." And I'm like, "Hey, I'll go for it. Have a good time." But just so you know, by the time you show up at tournament time, the lake's going to be 5 feet lower and conditions are going to change. So everything you just practiced for is going to be out the window. And what you're faced with, you'll learn prior to the tournament. Now, because Lake Lake Mojave is run by the Lake Mead National Parks recreation area,
Yeah.
Lake Mead and Lake Mojave are all national park situation. Our permit is a process that we do with the national parks.
Mm.
Now, they have a situation that we ran into in March when we had our March Laughlin Open
Okay.
is basically we typically would have a 4-day official practice before our tournament, which means during those 4 days you have to abide by tournament rules.
Sure.
Fish with somebody that's registered in the tournament. You have to wear your life jacket and the big
Okay.
motors on. You can't blow 5-mile-an-hour zones, things like that. But because National Parks is the permitting agency, they decided on their own accord to permit our practice days for our March event. And
Mhm.
what happened was, as you mentioned earlier, Mojave can, just like me, get some conditional wind situations come
The
through.
desert. Yeah. Yeah.
If there is any projection of 35-mile-an-hour plus gusts or winds in the permitted day,
Okay.
doesn't matter what time it is, whether it's at 2 a.m., 4 p.m., or 9 p.m. at night, national parks will rescind that permit.
Oh, really?
What happened was for our March event, the practice days had projected winds of up to 36, 37 miles an hour. So they told us, you can't have your guys practice during these days because the lake's been closed.
Mm. So if it's a projection, it's not the actual day of, at least they're
Not
giving
the
you
actual
doing it in
day. If
advance.
the day before they project anything over 35 miles an hour, the
Okay.
permit's pulled for that day.
Sure.
So when we apply for our permits, we only apply for our tournament days.
Sure.
Because in our typical program, we would advertise that there's 4 days of official practice. The national park decided for our March event to permit those days.
Mm.
So when the wind advisory came up for the practice days of over 35 miles an hour, they would call us and say, hey, your guys can't practice. And we're like, well, wait a minute. If Joe Blow wants to go to the launch ramp and is not involved in the tournament and launch his boat, there's nobody there that's going to stop him.
Mm.
No, you're right. So if they're not involved in the tournament, they can fish that day on their own accord and at their own safety factors.
Interesting.
All of the tournament that has a permit, they can't. So what we did was, based on those conditions for the U.S. Open, we terminated official practice.
Okay.
There is no official practice for our events on national park grounds anymore.
Okay.
You can fish all you want. You don't have to follow any rules, because when the tournament starts Monday, October 10th, that's when you're bound to the tournament rules.
I see. And again, on those tournament days, that's the permit days. Therefore, if it's going to be blowing 38 miles an hour, you may
There's a potential call that we could get Sunday that says, hey, we have projected winds for 35 mile an hour on Monday. You can't run your tournament Monday.
Got it.
Which is what happened last year.
Mhm.
The U.S. Open went from a 3-day format to a 2-day format. Roy Hawk won the tournament, which happened the same year Bub Tosh won at Lake Mead as well.
Mhm.
But that's just what you have to deal with. And one of the precautionary things that we're working on this year is actually permitting the Thursday day, which is typically the day after the tournament, so that if one of our days gets
Oh,
canceled, we can potentially still do our third day the following day. Now, that's
sure.
something that we'll be telling the anglers later, that says, hey, make your reservations till Wednesday, but be prepared just in case to stay Thursday as well if one of the days gets blown out.
Sure. Makes sense. Gotcha. Well, that's I wonder how many lakes across the country deal with the National Park Service. You know what I mean? I mean, normally when you're registering an event, that's not a very common thing. So that's kind of
No,
unique.
it's not very common. And the unique thing about it is, like, when we have to do our insurance policies for Lake Mead or Lake Mojave,
Sure.
usually you're insuring a local facility or Colville Bay. We actually have to insure the United States of America.
Wow.
As a national park, it's owned by the United States of America.
That's
So our insurance
crazy.
policy says $3 million policy to the United States of America.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it is what it is, and you have to go through the hoops that you have to do, and it's great to work with those people at the national park. We've got Naomi Shibata, who's the permit person we deal with, and I've been dealing with for 13 years now, so we've gotten to know each other pretty well.
Nice.
But it's just part of the nature of the beast, getting these events on and up and running. And we're looking forward to this one because the expo, we've got over 30 sponsors that are going to be involved with the expo this year. So typically, just to give you your listeners an idea, there is an off limit September 19th to the 30th to give
Okay.
the lake a little bit of break. And then October 1st, you can fish as much as you'd like, with who you'd like, doing what you'd like until the 8th. Once the sun goes down on the 8th, the lake is off limits again on the 9th for our Expo Hall of Fame induction and our mandatory meeting. So this year, the cool thing for any listeners out there that want to be a part of the U.S. Open that haven't been able to be a part before, this year is we're inviting the general public from 2 to 5 p.m. at the Edgewater Casino at the East Center, which is an indoor concert hall. You can come, be a part of the expo, meet your favorite anglers, meet your favorite sponsors, be a part of this year's U.S. Open. Come on out, stay for the weigh-ins, stay at one of the great partners that we have at Laughlin, whichever hotel it is that you prefer. We've got Hyatt's, we've got Tropicana, Riverside, you've got Edgewater, Aquarius. There's lots of different places to stay and actually come in, meet and greet, and be a part of this year's U.S. Open.
That's awesome. And I love how you broke up to have that off limits day, the day before the tournament. And then that's also when the expo's happening. I think that's going to encourage folks. I mean, bring your family, bring everybody to that expo style event. And the other thing, what's nice from an angling perspective is so many times on that final day, you're like, oh, well, what if I find something in the last, 30 minutes of the practice day? It's nice to take that day, get all your gear, together, get a good night's sleep before the tournament. And like you said, attend the meeting, attend the expo, and get all ready to go.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So tournament days are 10th, 11th, 12th. So it's a
tournament
Monday.
days are October 10th, 11th, and 12th. And like I said, there's still room for pros. If one of your listeners out there is thinking about coming on out, I just got a call from a guy in Texas that fishes MLF. He's like, I've always wanted to fish the U.S. Open, and I'm making it happen this year. Signed up, and he's on his way out there.
That's awesome.
We've got great national pros. Chris Aldane is coming on out with his wife, and just be a part of it. Come on out and experience it.
No doubt. And I will promise you, for anyone in the country that has not spent time in the desert Western lakes, it is an absolute unique fishery. I have been lucky enough now to be a lot of fisheries across the country, and it is one of the coolest places I have ever been to by far.
Yeah, I call it when we were at Mead, even Mojave, come see what it's like to fish on the moon.
That's exactly a great statement. And especially, I mean, Mojave is it is desolate, and so is Mead, but it's just you look around and you're just the scenery, and then you look down and you see a smallmouth in 25 feet of water. Or especially when you get into that fall time frame, you get those wolf packs, man. You'll have one on and there'll be 5 with it, and you'll be like, oh my. And that's what's great about a AAA event. It's like, dude, throw in there. There's 5 of them right there.
Especially if the pros got one on the line and another one comes in with it. It's a great way to work as a team. But I really appreciate you having me on and talking about the U.S. Open, and really wish all those people that have ever thought of coming out and being a part of it, make a trip out to Laughlin. Like you said, fly into Laughlin, grab a rental car, and come on out.
No doubt. And I guess, Billy, to wrap things up, kind of what I always like to do is talk about your personal biggest largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, if you've caught a spotted bass, and where you were and what you caught them on.
Well, my biggest largemouth is at 12.59. And the story behind that is I was just, before I ever started working for WAN Bass, I was in the construction industry as a construction management. And in 2008, everything kind of, what happened in 2008. So I had met a buddy of mine that got me into swim bait fishing, and I entered the Heavyweight Bass Classic at Don Pedro because I had designed my own swim baits that I was selling online on Facebook. One of them is called the Sunaga, which is Tsungana, which is Cherokee for trout. So it was a trout pattern bait. So in order to promote my baits at the time, I entered the HBC tournament up in Don Pedro Lake, went up there, fished against Butch Brown and all the big swim bait guys, and blanked at that particular tournament. So I drove all the way home, which was probably a 7-hour drive, and went to a local lake that I was part of out here, and said, "Hey, I'm going to make one cast right along this riprap area with a Huddleston and try to go home with at least catching a fish before I go home." That's when I caught my 12.58 or 12.98 largemouth bass, which is still currently my largest. I've had fish on that were bigger, but I never landed that were tuners. But at this point, I've never broken that PB yet.
Yeah.
As far as smallie, I think my biggest smallmouth is a 4.8 at Havasu, catching that with my buddy Mike Bond, who used to work here at Western Outdoor News back in the early days when we used to go to Havasu and throw swim baits out there. I think that was either a lunker punker fish or it might have been on one of my Snaga baits. And then spotted bass, I would have to say it's not real big because I haven't done a lot of spotted bass fishing, but it was up at that was probably spotted bass at Berryessa, Lake Berryessa.
Yeah.
Went up there last year with one of the editors from Western Outdoor News and Rusty Brown, because one of the companies that does the houseboats up there wanted us to come do a little piece on it. And that fishery is unbelievable because not only can you catch smallmouth or spotted bass, but you can get all three species in one day: largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted bass at one lake. It was a great adventure. So still trying to beat that PB of that 12.9, but that's what we're here for.
I like it. I like it. Well, I met some folks this year flying out to Champlain. I fished as a co-angler with my buddy Andrew Loberg and some of his buddies from that Berryessa region. And they were talking about Berryessa, and one of them had caught an A-rig fish, an Alabama rig fish, and one of each species on the same A-rig, which is just crazy to me. That's super cool I love fisheries when there's 3 different species like that.
Yeah, you can go out there and catch all 3 species and all day long, basically. Berryessa is a beautiful place. It's up in Napa, California, but I'd have to say, just for you guys, the most interesting thing that ever happened with a freshwater umbrella rig, fishing the Long Beach harbor area for a saltwater bass tournament.
Okay.
I connected on a 45-pound grouper.
Oh my gosh.
A-rig. Eating an Cool Baits underspin A-rig that I threw out there. And
did you just trash it?
But in California, you can't take pictures or hold those type of fish. So you had to catch and release it real quick.
Yeah.
Look at Instagram or my Facebook, you might find it somewhere.
There you go. It's awesome. Was that A-rig? I mean, was that just trash?
It was regular bass style A-rig.
And it didn't break. 45-pound fish on it.
45 with Kitech white, baits on it. Was going for calico bass, and all of a sudden I thought I hooked the bottom, and the bottom started moving
back.
Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, that's great, Billy. I love stories like that. One thing that I need to for sure get out of the way here: how can folks, if they are interested in making a push and heading out to Mojave, how do folks sign up for this?
So everything's on our website, and the parent company, like I mentioned, is Western Outdoor News. You can also find it at wombass.com. But if you go to wonews.com, the very top of our website is tournaments. If you click on the tournaments button, it'll not only show you the U.S. Open and all the other Wombass events we do, but it'll show you the Cabo Tuna Jackpot, the San Diego Tuna Jackpot, our Striper Derby, our Trout Fest at Big Bear, Trout Cast at Lake Cuyamaca. We do 12 events a year. So if you really want to find out more of what we do here at Western Outdoor News and Wombass, go to wonews.com, click on the tournaments, pick something that fancies your interest, and read about all the events. But like I said, we have room currently for pros and amateurs for this year's U.S. Open, and it could sell out at 225 entries. So get in quick, and we'd love to see you there.
Awesome. Awesome. Great stuff, Billy. Well, thanks for coming on, and I'm super excited to see the results.
And there's a Bass Cat Cougar FTD worth $80,000+ with a Mercury 250 up for first place, plus 80-some thousand dollars for
Big payout.
based on 225 boats. So come on out. Lots of sponsors, great sponsors, Next Gen Lithium, Daiwa, Hook. You got Life Source, Costa, Berkeley, Phoenix, Ava Garcia, Cigar, PowerPole, Lowrance, Livingston. They're all involved with this event. So come on out, meet the sponsors, meet the anglers, have a good time in Laughlin, and feel a little bit about what it's like to be involved with the U.S. Open.
Love it. Love it, man. Great way to end the show. And folks, check it out. And if you can't make it, be sure to watch the weigh-in, watch what happens out west.
Yeah.
It's going to be an
We'll be
incredible
live all 3 days from the U.S. Open at wombass.com and wonews.com. Plenty of places to view it. Some of our sponsors will be pushing that out there. We have a professional crew actually coming out for the live broadcast this year. So it's going to be one not to miss.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, Billy, we'll have a great rest of your day, and we will be sure to get this out for everyone to see, and get out west, folks.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.